Even if you weren't paying super close attention, even if you didn't have a dog in the fight and you were just a casual observer of what was going on, there were still some signs. There were still some visible and audible signs that something was up. I mean, conventions are supposedly these smooth infomercials now, right? They do everything possible to smoothly launch the party's nominee without any fuss, without any controversy, without any discordant notes, which means they're really not supposed to sound like this.
Without objection, the previous question is ordered. The question is on the adoption of the resolution. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. Pending another chair, the ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
I'm no expert, but I'm not sure it's totally clear that the ayes had that one and not the noes. That wasn't nearly the start of it. That came at the end of a long series of loud, raucous, occasionally violent signs that something was going on beneath the otherwise placid surface of the nominating Mitt Romney for president ordeal in 2012. I mean, here was another sign, the Des Moines Register having to break it to Iowa voters that even though the Iowa caucuses that year were supposedly that night won by Mitt Romney, and then a few days later they said it was a tie, and then they said actually Rick Santorum won those caucuses. In the end, yes, Des Moines Register political columnist Kathy Obradovich had to tell her readers, actually, you want to know who won? It was Ron Paul. Here was Fox News at the time. Ron Paul wins 21 of 25 delegates elected in Iowa. The reason we have primaries and caucuses, technically, is to win delegates who then themselves vote to pick a nominee at the party's national convention. The Ron Paul campaign won a lot of delegates in 2012. They did that in Iowa. They did that across the country. The trick is they just figured out a way to do that without actually winning the primaries and the caucuses. The Ron Paul campaign in 2012, they ran a whole shadow campaign to get delegates for Ron Paul after the vote in multiple states, but before the convention. And that is the same thing that is going on right now in Republican politics again. This time it's not Ron Paul. This time this is the strategy that the rest of the Republican Party is trying to organize against Donald Trump right now. It's just that Ron Paul is the one who showed them all how to do it. And when the Ron Paul campaign did it, it did not end well in a lot of places. Take a look at what happened in Louisiana, for example. Ron Paul lost the Louisiana primary in 2012, and he didn't just lose Louisiana by a hair. Congressman Ron Paul lost the state of Louisiana by a full head of hair and a beard. I mean, Rick Santorum got 49% of the vote in the state that year. Mitt Romney came in second with 27%. Then came Newt Gingrich, and then came Ron Paul, fourth place, single digits, a measly 6% of the vote. And yeah, that's what Jeb Bush used to call a jackpot. But honestly, that is a terrible showing. And in Louisiana that year, in 2012, a 6% showing in the primary, that was good for precisely 0 delegates. Or so everyone thought. Every state party picks its delegates by slightly different means. In Louisiana in 2012, turns out they had a primary and then a caucus. It was a caucus that nobody seemed to pay attention to, except for Mr. 6%, Ron Paul. And at this low-key, ho-hum, nobody's paying attention, bureaucratic state caucus, which followed the primary, Ron Paul supporters maneuvered themselves into majorities in 4 of the state's 6 congressional districts. That means they got themselves 12 delegates for Ron Paul. I mean, even though everybody who thought they watched the Louisiana contest on TV thought they saw Ron Paul lose there, and they did. Everybody thought he would get no delegates out of Louisiana because of that. But no, turns out actually he got a bunch. And actually, wait, there was more after the first caucus where they picked up 12. Because through the rules of that caucus, which no other campaign really paid attention to, the Paul campaign was then able to select an additional 5 delegates, which brought their total to 17. So at this point in the process, despite getting 4th place, 6% of the vote in Louisiana primary, despite getting trounced by both Rick Santorum and Mitt Romney, oh, and yeah, Newt Gingrich too, Ron Paul entered the Louisiana State Convention with the most delegates of any of the candidates running for president that year. And then that is when things went completely off the rails, to the point of arrests and broken bones. The state convention in Louisiana is where they're supposed to come up with their list of exactly which people would represent the state at the big national Republican convention in Tampa that summer. Shortly after that state convention kicked off, a Ron Paul supporter motioned to remove the state party chairman. When that motion was ignored, the man continued to protest, and then he was dragged out by security. It was reported at the time that in that process, some of the man's fingers were broken. There are local news reports of him returning later on with, indeed, his fingers splinted. So the Ron Paul delegates, who thought they had rightfully taken over the party through the rules and the magic of showing up and not leaving, they decided at that state convention, after that whole fracas, that they would stay in the room, but they would turn their chairs around 180 degrees and start holding their own state Republican convention at the other end of the same room where the other Republicans were. So the other Republicans are holding what they thought was their state Republican convention. The Ron Paul people are holding what they think is their state convention. They're all in the same room at the same time at the Shreveport Convention Center. They just faced opposite directions. And so one side had their chairman running their convention. The other side of the room elected their own chairman to oversee their convention. And maybe it could have gone on like that forever, you know, parallel universes next to each other in the same room but looking opposite directions. But then the Ron Paul convention people gave their chairman the microphone. And then security rushed him.
Sir, this is the chairman. This is the chairman. Let go of the microphone. He's handicapped. What's he doing? Look. Hey, back up. Back up. No. Yeah, he has an artificial hip. He has a chance to walk out. An artificial hip.
After all that, after the broken fingers, the bad hip, the I need a doctor, the Ron Paul campaign, at the end of all that, actually got their 17 Ron Paul delegates sent to the national convention in Tampa, even though they won 6% of the vote in the state primary and everybody thought they'd get 0. But they did this kind of thing all over the country. Ron Paul also lost the Nevada caucus in 2012 pretty soundly. But never mind that. That's just the voters. Ron Paul lost with Nevada voters in 2012, but he effectively won the state 3 months later at the state party convention. And truthfully, the Nevada Republican Party should have probably seen it coming, because when Ron Paul ran in 2008, his supporters caused such a ruckus in 2008 in Nevada that the state shut down the convention that year without picking any delegates at all. So this time, 4 years later in 2012, Nevada got warned ahead of time by the RNC. Don't go causing any trouble, Nevada. When Mitt Romney wins the state again this year, do not try and fiddle with the party rules to give somebody else the delegates. Don't do it. They were warned. They did it anyway. Of course they did. Just like they had done 4 years earlier in Nevada in 2008, just like they did that year in Louisiana in 2012. In Nevada in 2012, they took over the state Republican convention. And again, even though Ron Paul soundly lost the caucus there months earlier, Ron Paul came out of the state convention with 22 out of the 25 state delegates. And the Romney people tried to stop them in 2012. The Romney people thought they had learned their lesson from 4 years earlier, right? The Romney people in 2012 tried to keep up with the skullduggery and the intrigue and the trickery. At the 2012 convention, the Ron Paul campaign had been handing out slates, basically green pieces of paper with names of Ron Paul people who they wanted elected as delegates. In response, the Mitt Romney people struck back, allegedly, by making up fake Ron Paul slates that looked just like the real ones. The Romney campaign allegedly, Romney folks, look at this, fake, allegedly handed out matching green sheets of paper, printed on the same hue, right? And the Romney ones that were handed out also said, hey, these are the Ron Paul delegates. But the names listed there were actually the names of Mitt Romney backers. Now, whether or not the Romney campaign was behind that dirty trick, it didn't work. They were amateurs at this stuff compared to the Ron Paul people. The Ron Paul campaign really did go on to take 22 of the 25 delegates. They were not fooled. They would not be dissuaded. They would not be distracted. They stuck it out. And that was nothing compared to Oklahoma. The Oklahoma State Convention that year turned into a street fight.
We're told police had to get involved when a 70-year-old Mitt Romney supporter punched a Ron Paul supporter in the head after they disagreed on the vote. But most of the contention was captured on cell phone video.
This woman right here, Mrs. has physically assaulted me.
The video you are watching is being recorded by a woman who says she was just hit in the back.
And with a fist to my back. I did. Yes, you most certainly did.
And a woman struck me with her fist in the middle of my spine and said, "It's your own damn fault." This wasn't the only commotion during the Oklahoma Republican State Convention. This Ron Paul supporter says he was hit in the head by a 70-year-old Mitt Romney supporter.
Got through it, got done, moved on, and got to the important business that everyone here is here for, instead of wasting time on something else. And I really did appreciate how great the police were.
I did appreciate how great the police were. This is all very, very polite, except for the punching in the head and stuff. Then the crowd at one point proceeded to boo and hiss at the state's sitting Republican governor, Mary Fallin, when she said at the convention that the party's single goal was to elect Mitt Romney as president that year.
Sounds like we got some Obama lovers out there.
Oklahoma, arguably the reddest state in the nation. I assure you there were no Obama lovers at their convention. But the fight between the Ron Paul supporters and the Romney supporters got so bad that someone, at one point, either the venue or maybe a campaign supporter of one side or the other, actually resorted to turning the lights out on everybody. I'm not kidding.
Attendees say there was a lot of disagreement throughout the day, but things came to a halt when the lights were turned off and the conference room walls closed on one group.
My heart was totally broken when the convention just was put into shambles, and they were turning mics off, they turned the lights off, they pulled the walls across to prevent delegates from voting.
Okay, so after the punching and the blackout and the booing and the walls being closed, you would think both sides would kind of give up, like this didn't work. But you know what? Giving up is for amateurs. The Ron Paul folks did not give up. They decided to convene and hold their own convention, what they said was the real convention, in the parking lot outside, the parking lot of the Embassy Suites Hotel. All right, one more, just one more. Maine. In the initial 2012 Maine caucus, Mitt Romney just barely beat Ron Paul. And there was some controversy. One of the precinct caucuses was canceled due to bad weather. The Ron Paul people claimed the weather wasn't actually that bad, and the whole thing was canceled to disenfranchise Ron Paul supporters. So there was a little bad blood around the initial caucus anyway. But when it came time to select delegates at the state convention, everybody was already in a huff. To start off that convention, Ron Paul supporters elected one of their own as the convention chairman. Thereafter, every time a Romney supporter objected to any proceeding of any kind, the new chairman ruled it out of order instantly. And with that kind of guy in charge, no surprise, yeah, Mitt Romney may have technically won the state in the caucus when everybody voted, but when they had the convention to give out the delegates, 20 of the state's 24 delegates went to Ron Paul. And then at Tampa, at the Republican National Convention, after those Ron Paul supporting delegates from Maine had already arrived, the national RNC decided to intervene. They basically threw out half the Ron Paul delegation from Maine and replaced them with Mitt Romney supporters.
We have to proceed with the order of business.
It's unfair to us. He sat here and objected. He said, are there any objections? We objected. And you know, it's like, why even ask the question at that point?
Maine got screwed of half their delegates, more than half actually. That's why their governor's not here today, because he said he wouldn't come down unless their delegates got seated. Half of them got taken away, and they were replaced by people that the Republican Party, the RNC picked.
Without objection, the previous question is ordered. The question is on the adoption of the resolution. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. Pending another chair, the ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
I was duly elected as a delegate for the state of Maine by 1,000 of my fellow Republicans. Who knew exactly who I was going to vote for.
Ron Paul's Maine delegation stormed out of the Republican convention in protest. Some of them wore clothespins with lobsters on them, clipped onto their noses to show both that they were from Maine and that they were disgusted with what had happened. Other delegations threatened to revolt in support of what happened to the delegation from Maine that had been half sent home because the RNC didn't like who they supported. Texas supported them. Our friends from Nevada supported. It was a bit of a screaming revolt. I mean, that said, on primetime TV, it was still an infomercial, right? On the scene, it was real chaos, real anger, real revolt, and screaming bloody murder. For all the talk about the chaos that may happen at this year's Republican convention, you know what? We have seen this movie before. I mean, maybe we've seen the short feature version of it because it was just a minority of folks involved in this Ron Paul scheme in 2012. But even so, even with just a minority of folks from the Ron Paul sliver of the party, what they wrought in 2012, it's been sort of written out of the history of 2012, but it was a mess, and it was aggro. And you know what? It's all possible that this is going to be a moot point, that frontrunner Donald Trump will have all the delegates he needs heading into the convention. And if that's the case, it's possible that the Republican convention will just be an infomercial. This time it'll be a Donald Trump branded infomercial. But even in an election in 2012, when this kind of thing supposedly wasn't an issue, just under the surface of what was supposedly so calm in 2012, there was not just chaos and deceit and anger, but also sometimes violence. People were arrested. People were hurt. This stuff gets woolly really, really fast. And so I say this, and we're doing this special report in part to say that there is nothing new under the sun. Don't believe it when people tell you nothing like this has ever happened before. But that undercard story from 2012, I think, should also be a cautionary tale. People take politics really seriously for a reason because it matters. And stuff can get really ugly really fast, even under much more normal circumstances than we're looking at this year. We have seen how bad it gets when it's really not all that bad. If it is going to be bad this year, brace yourself. Take this stuff seriously.